may have seen this article from the Social Science Journal, and he mentions actually you in there, Peter. He just says this reality violence on TV, it started in Vietnam. Is that speaking or is that pretty accurate? Reality violence, in my call this. Titillation to the audience.
I would argue with that. During World War II, there were controls of pictures and videos through the first part of the war.
Yeah.
But certainly, according to the historians that I've read and the documentaries I've seen, by 1943, the American public was given vivid pictures and video of certainly the fighting in the islands of the Northern Pacific as Allied forces approached Japan. I think this reality TV and war is confused with simply television reporting. Video was replacing, or not so much replacing, but with an adjunct to the normal black and white print pictures. So the idea of having helicopters in the sky or planes dropping bombs became quite exciting, but it was a reality that technology was allowing the world to see. I'm all in favor, in fact, of more and more reality from the battlefield. The more we see of the damage that war does, the more likely that in a democratic society like the United States, the public will move to maybe lessen the violence or shorten the war.
Yeah, I think actually one of the fair criticisms that has been made of American coverage of the war in Iraq is that it has cleaned it up, that there is much less bloodshed and suffering seen on American television reporting than there is in Iraq. And some of this has to do with questions of, quote, taste. But some of them, and particularly the administration's refusal to allow television to film the coffins of the deceased soldiers coming home because of the negative effects on national morale, and the networks have more or less acceded to that.
To add to this one, especially war from Iraq today, 90% of the video what we see today from CNN, NBC, Al Jazeera, whatever, is military video. Only 10% is coming from independent television station organization. 90% of the video is American.
Well, that takes us nicely onto the concept of being embedded. Some of these cool jargon.
Well, I don't like this to be embedded. What you see when you're embedded, you see just only what is from the field. This is only one point of it.
That's in the criticism that you are we're all human, we spend some time with one group of people, we're bound to sort of tend to go towards what they think or believe or feel.
But you have to have people from other sides.
Well, you do, but being embedded, what have you said to the criticism that you're too close to the thinking of the American troops?
You're a target, same as the American soldier.
My very good friend Bob Wera was almost killed while he was embedded. His cameraman Doug Wolf was also seriously injured while he was embedded. The CBS camera team of Paul Douglas and James Brolin were both killed while they were embedded. Obviously, when you were working with the military under fire, you share the dangers that military has, so that it's not a safe, cushy posting. There are limits. Obviously, wherever you are, you can only see what you can see from there. And if the only reporting was from embedded sources, then that would be a crippling deficiency. But there are plenty of unilateral reporters operating outside of embedded posts in the United States and elsewhere, so that I don't think that that's been a big problem in the reporting.
This takes us back to Media Inc., the business of media, because people want to know exactly what's going on, when, where, and how, as it happens. But that takes you guys closer to a 50 caliber bullet flying over your head. Is it worth it?
I have been a critic of embedding from the beginning, and I've been embedded a few times. The main reason is that we're talking about an American military that is very well disciplined, very well controlled from within. Soldiers are very reluctant to talk about the reality that they see. Officers basically are not very interested in discussing their problems with the media. And under the rules that all reporters sign to be embedded, you aren't even permitted to use unattributed quotes from soldiers that you happen to be speaking to. So if the general in command says we're winning, and the sergeant major says that's rubbish, we're losing, you can quote the general, but you cannot quote the sergeant major, or even use the quote without his name, unattributed. Now, some journalists, most journalists in the last 2 years have been ignoring that requirement, but in the first 2 or 3 years of the war, those requirements, those issues were followed, so that's why the American public didn't have a clue, really, that there weren't enough troops, that the armor of the vehicles wasn't very well contained, that morale wasn't particularly great. So that embedding requirement agreed to by the mainstream media in the U.S., I think is very onerous and limits the ability of reporters to tell the truth of what's happening.
Peter's made it very clear.
Reporters who are embedded than reporters in general. Operating unilaterally in Iraq, I was able to report all of these things without constraint because I wasn't embedded. There's also the sort of Stockholm syndrome. When you are embedded, the soldiers are protecting you, and you are grateful to them for it. And therefore there is a kind of sentimental identification that goes on, and that too can corrupt reporting. Although, there are ways to balance for that.
In Vietnam, I would simply point out, Dave, we were with the soldiers all the time. That did not stop us reporting the reality of how bad the war was going. And one of the problems with that embedding, you're either embedded or you're not with American forces. You have to be embedded. And if you don't obey the rules, you will not get re-embedded. And while you can, in fact, report from Baghdad and elsewhere as an independent, I think it's within the military itself that the kind of criticism that is meaningful needs to surface. And that came later in the war from those within the military, generals and others, who finally got around to writing tell-all books after lying to reporters for years about the progress.
Let's just hold the pause button on that one for a second and see what any of our listeners have to say. It's www.rthk.org.hk. Very, very straightforward. We'll go to some questions in just a second. Peter's made it very clear what he thinks. Do you agree or disagree?
Well,
Anyway, Arnett.
Yes. Yeah, but we have to just add also from those embedded American journalists, young people, it's mostly people who are dying, most camera guys or people who want to get fruitful, they're just making mistakes. For people who pass the war 1, 2, or 3, they have this different experience.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've been actually focusing pretty narrowly on Iraq and embedding with U.S. forces. And just to open this up a little wider, when covering a guerrilla war, sometimes embedding with a guerrilla force is the only way to get that side of the story or to get it accurately. Is it worth the risk? Sometimes it is. Sometimes if it's a story that needs to be told and that's how you need to do it, you do it. I have seen, over the years that I've been doing this, especially young people coming in and kind of getting a thrill from going out with the guerrillas many times, coming back and telling tales at the bar and bullets whizzing past their heads and going out again. That's when it's not worth the risk.
Message received. Let's go to some questions, if you would. I want to go back